Hello, everyone. Greg Lefersky here, founder of True North Development. Welcome to our podcast, where we have real conversations with real people about real transformation. We hope that you'll be inspired to take action, to identify your purpose, and walk in it. Enjoy. Welcome, viewers of the True North Development podcast. Welcome, Brian, to our first day of shooting this new podcast.
Thanks for letting me be here.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. Brian, you're my friend. We've known each other for several years now. Care about you a lot. So grateful that you're here today. Just start off by sharing with us, who is Brian Williams?
All right. Well, my name is Brian. I am a husband, father. I am currently a realtor for Remax Premier Realty here in the Villages, Florida. Love what I do. Love getting to work with people. My wife, Brooke, and I have been married 21 plus years, and we have two awesome kids, Ainsley, who is a senior in high school right now, and Braxton, who is a sophomore in high school. So we're enjoying this stage of life right now.
There's a lot to enjoy, isn't there?
A lot of fun going on, a lot of activity going on.
There is a lot of activity. Sometimes it feels like more than one can handle. We were actually talking this morning about that a little bit. I really appreciate hanging out with a group of guys recently, and one of them mentioned he just asked God for the wisdom and the courage and the bandwidth to handle his day. That, hey, if he put all of this activity in front of us, he's equipped us to walk through it and to do it in a way that glorifies him and lifts other people up. So that's what we want to do today. Is we want to talk a little bit about, at True North Development, what we do is really help people get really clear about what it is they want, where they're heading in their future. I might even say what their purpose is, right? Mm-hmm. Why they were created to begin with. Figure out a process, build some habits that help people move in that direction. We might even call it the transformation process, right? From, like for me in my life, it's completely true that there was a man that was not walking with God, that was not walking in his true purpose, that was more focused on satisfying his own needs than really anyone else's. Including God, what God wanted for my life. And my life has been transformed. It's underway, right? It's under construction. There's still a long way to go. But for me, there's a transformation process that is possible for all of us. How do you feel about that idea that transformation is possible for all of us?
Yeah, it's possible. It's also, like you said, ongoing. We talk a lot when we meet about God and His Word and how that helps direct us. I think about the verse in Romans 12:2 that says, "Don't be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." I think it's like adding the word constant renewing of your mind. We don't come to know Jesus and all of a sudden we go from a worldly mindset to a Jesus mindset, and that happened and now we're good to go. No, there's this constant renewing of our mind as we grow through this transformation process, because He doesn't just transform us wholly, completely, all at one moment. And so as we walk with Him, as we navigate this difficult world sometimes, a little at a time, He keeps chipping away and transforming us into the men He wants us to be. And so that's what I see Him doing in my life right now, too, is just chiseling away as He sees fit, a little at a time, to hopefully turn me into the transformed person that He wants me to be.
It's really beautiful and exciting. And you mentioned the renewing of our minds, and we actually discussed that this morning a little bit, that there's a psychological piece, and our bodies are made in a way that our thoughts, the things that we allow to pass through our mind, sometimes the things that go on in our non-conscious or subconscious mind really manifest in the kind of life, in our circumstances, and how we behave and how we react to things. So what we think and the thoughts that we harbor, and we talked about that idea this morning that we ruminate, our brain will automatically take the things that we give it and chew on it and chew on it and chew on it, and it becomes our reality. So for me, the renewing of the mind is a big, big deal, again, from a guy that was more concerned about what other people thought, and I probably still have a little bit of a hangover in that space, right? Maybe I care too much about what other people think of the things that I do and the decisions I make. So that's a thing for me, right? But to this place where I kind of know what my purpose is, and I know what kind of dent God wants me to make in the universe, and I'm at least walking toward it. Probably not living fully in it, but that's kind of the goal here at True North Development, is we want to walk alongside people that want that for themselves, that maybe feel stuck, maybe feel like they're not living in their fullest potential, and there's a tug on their heart. We want to kind of bring that out in the open and talk about it and figure out what we can do to help people kind of take steps in that direction. How do you feel about that whole process? I know you and I are chatting a little bit from time to time and kind of working on that with each other, but what is that process like for you?
Well, I like the idea of understanding who we were made to be. Who has God created us to be? What are we good at? What are we strong at? What do we get passionate about? And we talked early on in our time about getting that clarity. But then even if you know who you are and you know what you're passionate about, you know what you're good at and get excited about, you still have to have the courage to then take forward steps to live that out. You still have to have the mindset to overcome any of the fears that will pop up to keep you from living out this passion, this desire of who God wants you to be, because the world and Satan and your flesh will come up with all kinds of reasons why you shouldn't do what you think you should do, and to keep holding you back, basically, from becoming that person. And so it keeps pausing our transformation. And so, mentally, we have to be telling our mind what to think. And so when he says, the renewing of your mind, or elsewhere where he says to take these thoughts captive, we have to be in charge of where our head is taking us. Our successes and our failures, following the Lord, sinning, all of these things start in our mind, and with a decision we're either going to do this or not do that, or listen to God's voice or listen to the world's voice, and all these things happen in the mind. So I think you're right on. As we've walked through these steps of clarity and courage and action steps, we do have to mentally be in the right place to keep all of that moving forward.
YouTube is a wonderful thing, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I go there for education, inspiration. Zig Ziglar popped up on my feed the other day. I love Ziglar's teaching. For anybody that's not familiar with him, go check him out. He's talking about hope, right? And sometimes our thoughts, the things people say to us, what we see in the world, actually chips away at our ability to actually have hope. And in his estimation, hope is the biggest motivator. Like the conversation we're having right now, like, can you really live the life of your dreams? Understanding that our dreams are wired in us by our Creator, right? Like, God gives us passion for things that are good for us and that contribute to the well-being of society and that build His kingdom. And we have to believe that we can step into that, right?
Yeah. Jim
Rohn, another guy that YouTube likes to put in front of me. I love Jim Rohn. He talks about that idea that as soon as we step out in faith and encourage and say, I'm going to do this awesome, big, wonderful, high-impact thing, that almost immediately people and our mind wants to start stealing from it and saying, that's not possible. You're not going to do that. Have you experienced that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, people want to bring you down. Your own past experience and the fears in your mind want to bring you down or hold you back and all these things. And so I think that so many of the things that, especially just thinking about men in these days that are dealing with depression and struggling with anxiety and things that are very commonplace, so much of that is because we're stuck in a rut or we're stuck in fear, not living out in the way God intended us to be, not doing anything exciting or things that we're passionate about. When we take those positive steps to do that, we get energized and it helps us to take the next step forward because we get excited because of that hope. It's like, okay, and when we lose sight of that, that's when we begin to just not know what step to take in any direction. That's when we begin to get sad or depressed. It's because there's not a lot of hope in our future. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of purpose in our day-to-day walking. And I think men, especially, I think all of us are designed to have purpose, to move forward. And that should fuel us to keep getting up each day to do the things that we're excited about.
Straw poll. Out of 100 people, how many do you think really understand what their purpose is?
Small number. Less 10%. Than 30.
Less than 30, yeah. I would agree. That was me for a long time. So growing up in a pretty big family, learning a pretty strong work ethic, learning about character. My parents are awesome. My father passed away a number of years ago. My mom just turned 86. Praise God for that.
Yeah.
They really raised me right. But stepping out into the world at 17 on my own, I wasn't ready for it. I don't know that any of us are, really. So I leaned into a lot of things that it was really all about work for me. My first marriage, as a matter of fact, kind of came apart because I put work ahead of everything else. Mm-hmm. And maybe I still battle with that a little bit, too, from time to time, that I think, being successful according to the world, drives me sometimes. And I have to stop and go, wait a minute. You're not going back there, are you? So some of the old ways want to continue to tug on us. But as it relates to purpose, like knowing who I am and what I'm wired to do, it was a process for me to learn that. I don't know about you. And maybe my purpose changed over time. So again, first 10 or 15 years of my professional career is all about serving in the restaurant, hospitality business. I learned how to work really hard in that business. I learned how to serve people and how to understand people and really pour into them. I also learned how to party a little bit, right? I tried to fill that void, that pain I was feeling with, alcohol and hanging out with my friends and doing things that really didn't contribute to my well-being. They didn't move me in the direction of my purpose. And over time, God revealed to me that, like you said earlier, these are some things that you're really good at that fill you up. I made you this way. Start doing more of these things, in your work and career and so on. And that's really how we ended up here, was God brought me to a place where he's like, listen, I've poured into you for 30 years, however long. He's poured into me in my whole life. It's been 58 years. But so he's pouring into me, right? It's time for you to start pouring into other people. And so our whole goal here is to try to help people figure out what their purpose is, start taking steps in that direction. And like you and I have talked about, it is a process. I'm not sure that either of us have arrived there yet, but we're working toward it, right? But for me, I can sleep a lot better at night. I know I don't need to take alcohol and, cigarettes and all the other things I used to use to kind of dull the pain, fill the hole, I guess, for me. Walking in purpose is very exhilarating, yes?
Yeah, well, there were so many, when we say less than 30% or whatever the number actually is, I mean, the world, people around you, social media, they'll give you a purpose if you don't wake up each day knowing what you want your purpose to be and what God designed your purpose to be. Instead, we'll seek after the things that the world tells us we should have, like success or material things or satisfaction in relationships or reputation or whatever it is. And then we're just kind of in this hamster wheel of life chasing whatever passion or desire comes our way, and basically ended up being without purpose because we can't decide what purpose we want. But when there's direction and when you are being productive and you are acting out in your strengths and you are getting good feedback from that, the whole thing just works together to fuel you to be the person that you are designed to be. That's a way more fun life. That takes away depression. That takes away boredom. That takes away not knowing what to do with each day, because when you're acting out in your giftedness and you're acting to truly actually help and serve other people, you're not going to run out of things to do each day. You're probably going to go to bed exhausted each day, but it's a good feeling of rest because you've accomplished what you set out to accomplish that day, and you know there's another day just like that turning around tomorrow. And that feels a lot better than laying down at night not really even knowing what the next day is going to bring, because you don't know what you want out of it.
This conversation is loaded. There's so many things in here. You mentioned depression and anxiety and boredom.
Yeah.
Those are three. So what brought that to the surface for you in this conversation, depression, anxiety, and boredom?
Well, in my life, there's been a really big transition. I was a pastor for 25 years until last summer, and through my own shortcomings, resigned from that role that I knew so well. And in the time it took to figure out what God's next step was for me, there was a lot of sitting around with no purpose, a lot of boredom, a lot of depression, a lot of time to think about the things I had done wrong or the things that weren't going right or all these things. And so then you are just turning to whatever to get through the day, and that's just not a good way to live. It is depressing. It is lonely. It is feeling like you don't matter because you're not really playing a role in your life, in your circle of influence that is productive for you or anyone around you.
Yes.
And that's just not a good way to live. And so as we've been talking, as I've taken on this new role in real estate, serving and loving people in a new way, as I began to repurpose my schedule and my calendar to spend time with people that matter, to spend time doing things that matter, to take care of myself physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, all these things. The days are now beginning to be filled in with purposeful things, and there is less boredom, less depression, less anxiety, and more hope and excitement and energy about going into each day. And when I turn and give God credit for any of those things, His love has never ended for me. It's been there the whole time. He knew all of these things way in advance and has just been wanting me to make sure that I keep my eyes on Him and allow Him to steer me through this journey to get me where He wants me to be. And sometimes when we get our eyes off of Him, there needs to kind of be like a reset. Me and Braxton in the car, my son, we were laughing today about Control-Alt-Delete. Like when computers first came out, you remember everything. Control-Alt-Delete, that's just how we fixed anything. You remember that? It's like, yes, what's wrong with that? Well, I don't know. Did you Control-Alt-Delete? And sometimes in our life, I just need to Control-Alt-Delete. Just do like a reset in my mind and shut everything down, turn it back on. The thinking of God being the main software in my life, basically, that runs everything. Let's do a reset. Let's get Him back in charge with His default actions. Let's get it going back on. I had customized everything in my life. That's what you do. You work with the program, you customize it, you do all this stuff. And sometimes you need to go, no, forget all of that. Take me back to the maker, to the beginning of how it was in the beginning, and let him start over fresh with me the way he sees fit. And I think that's kind of where I got in my life. And he was like making me hit pause in a way that was embarrassing and hurtful and hard to go through. But now he can start fresh in my mind and in my heart. And I think that's where we're at. And I think that's a good thing.
Restarting fresh.
Yeah.
What a great analogy. Control, Alt, Delete. I have a buddy in the IT business, and he says, reboot, then panic. So, right? And you're talking about rebooting. Sometimes we run off in a direction. For me, it's my desire, like, I want to please me, right? I mean, I want to please me. And that's almost never the right choice, right? Every decision that we make, I mentioned this earlier, moves us further or closer to the person that we're supposed to be or further away.
Yeah.
It's very rare that we can stay neutral, right? Every choice, every decision, every action that we take, that's what we talk about in our coaching program is, right? Where do you want to go? Why do you want to go there? What steps do you need to take? Take them, right? I mean,
yeah.
I think we all know what we should do or what we really want to do, what we're wired to do. Sometimes we just need somebody to walk alongside us and ask the right questions. And really that's what we do here, at True North Development, is we just ask a lot of good questions and help people really define what it is they're being called to do and then help them take steps to go do that.
It's a huge help because sometimes I'm not sure if I can trust myself or not because I know that I'm pretty messed up in my head. And so to have someone walk alongside you and ask those questions and then be reminded that if it is really strong in my heart, God's in control in my heart, and He puts those things there. So there must be something He's trying to get me to move toward.
Yes.
And it's definitely helpful to have someone walk alongside you during that process instead of just kind of floundering out there on your own. The direction, kind of just having someone guide your gaze and say, no, look here. Don't quit getting distracted over here. Just guide your gaze toward helping you, attract what you were trying to attract for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about anxiety and depression, and I've heard it expressed this way before. It may or may not be true, and you may or may not agree, but we feel anxious when we're living in the future, like we're worrying about what might happen. And we know, I think, that 99.9% of the things that we worry about that might happen never actually do. Mm-hmm. And then depression is living in the past. For me, I've made some pretty big mistakes in my past, and my personality type, I'm going to talk about that a little bit here in just a minute, but on the Enneagram, I'm a reformer, or in some Enneagram programs, it's called a perfectionist. Like, I like to have my I's dotted and my T's crossed, and I don't like to do things wrong. So when I make a mistake, old Greg would not only beat himself up, but I mentioned before that he's a people pleaser, so he wants people to like him. So when other people start beating Greg up, it's super unhealthy, right? That depression, that really just steals from you. And we know that we're redeemed, right? Like when we come to Jesus and when we rely on Him to cleanse us of our sin, and when we repent in recovery ministry, which I was a part of for a long time, it's called making amends. Like, if I made a mistake, I'm going to go to my brother and I'm going to ask for forgiveness. And they're going to give it to me most of the time. Even if they don't, I know that I've asked God for forgiveness and I can move on from that, right? Those are old mistakes that we don't have to carry with us into the future. But I like to do that. I like to walk around with my baggage, right? And remind myself of why I'm not worthy. And I don't believe, I don't know, are we supposed to live that way?
I don't think so. I think sometimes we as humans like to have an excuse built-in excuse to say, well, I didn't do this, but it's because I got this stuff in my past. And so that's just another way of getting our gaze off the goal and off where we're headed, and look back in our past, and we get distracted, and then everything comes to a halt, basically, and we never seem to get out of that funk from our past, and so we don't move forward to being successful in what we could be doing, because we keep just going, we hold ourselves back. We allow our past and our mistakes to be this weight that just holds us back. It's one of those things that we should throw off, like in Hebrews where he says, throw off those things that are so easily entangling you and weighing you down so that you can go run the race. And sometimes we like to hold on to this stuff, and it makes it really hard to run the race. So I don't think that's the best way to live. I think maybe sometimes we like to hold on to stuff to if we're really hard on ourselves kind of person, we like to hold on to things to beat ourselves up and to make sure that we don't do it again. I mean, I was told, learn from your mistakes. Don't keep repeating them. And, well, sometimes in my mind, I need to keep remembering my mistakes so I don't keep having to learn from it by repeating them. And so it's just this constant messed up mind of mine that won't allow myself to move ahead in freedom because I know my past. But instead of just learning and moving forward and trusting God to keep making me into a new man, I hold on to that as, I don't know if it's supposed to motivate me to be better, or if it just, the guilt and the shame is something that I don't want to let go of because it keeps me humble, and I'm afraid of being prideful because then you could just repeat the same sins again, the same mistakes, and so, but it's definitely not healthy. That's allowing our past and our mistakes to kind of drive us, and that's not where we're wanting to head, and we want to go away from those things.
The interesting thing about personal development, really kind of that's what we're all about. That's what we're talking about here is personal development, transformation, identifying our purpose and continuing to walk into it. That's personal development. It's important to recognize that we should try some new things. Mel Robbins defines courage as looking at something that I want to try, being scared, but trying it anyway. She uses the word try intentionally. We could use the word doing it anyway, but sometimes it's not successful. Sometimes we're going to try things that don't work, and we have to be willing to go, okay, I tried it. Let me try something different.
Right.
Let me try something else. Right. Keep trying. So our mistakes, and I'm really talking to me here, right? Trying to coach myself up. But our mistakes are only mistakes if we don't learn from them. If we learn and grow from the mistakes that we make, right? It's not insanity. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and again, expecting different results. So if we can continue to do the same things over and over again, and we're not willing to make changes and try new things and fail, right? Then we're not growing. What thoughts on failure? Let's throw that out there.
Well, sometimes we need to be in a situation where it's okay to fail. I'm in a position now at 46 years old with a brand new career that I know nothing about. Every day I'm having to try things and either learn from them working or not working, and then adjust it and try something new the next day. And I've got people, thankfully, that are helping me, and they're giving me advice, people like you that have been in this career before, and others who are around me on my team right now. But there's something about me, too, where I sometimes have to learn the hard way, and I've got to try a couple of things. And even if I have help, I might try to make it more efficient or do it in a way that seems to fit my personality better. And so I am in a spot now because I'm not in the same role that I was in for so many years, where you felt like every day you knew what each day was going to bring. You knew what to expect. You knew the answers. You knew how to get through anything that came up.
Yes.
And so you get in a position where you're not having to try new things. Maybe you don't have to be very courageous when you're in that spot. And because of where I'm at right now today, it's good to have someone walking alongside me like you who's encouraging me to be courageous and take new steps, because I have to. And if I wasn't willing to do that right now, we wouldn't get very far at all, because I don't really know much about what I'm doing, to be honest. And so it's a humbling spot to be in, but it also is kind of exciting to say, hey, I get to go out each day and try something, and let's see what God and me can make of this new thing.
Courage is another topic for another podcast. However, yes, if we have to have the courage to try new things and be willing to fail.
Yeah.
Picture popped into my mind. I walked into the garage, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, to my son Graylin holding two coil springs from the front end of his car up in the air with this big smile on his face. He had bought some new suspension parts for his car, and hey, Dad, I want to do this tonight after school, and I want to just get up underneath there and jack it up and figure it out. And I'm like, no, son, we need to look at the manual. We need to have a process, right? Well, he didn't listen to me. He did it anyway, and the achievement. I mean, he had to go back in and tweak it 2 or 3 or 4 times, but he was able to get in there, and he had the courage to try something and struggle with it, but try it again and struggle with it, try it again. Now he's got suspension all the way around his car. He did it all himself. I wouldn't have had the courage to do something like that, right? I would have needed a plan. I would have had it all mapped out. But sometimes trying something that we've never tried before, just on faith, and knowing that it could go wrong, is a good and healthy thing.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes we have that when we're really young, and then because of life experience or whatever, we get callous to trying new things because we've been hurt before, and we start to think like you were thinking, no, we better have a step-by-step plan before we even start. And then we never build the step-by-step plan, so we never start, and then nothing gets accomplished because we're so afraid that if we try it and it doesn't work, we're so afraid of failing or being embarrassed or wondering what people are going to think of us, or if we didn't say it right, or if whatever. And so something in us as we grow up keeps us from being like we were when we were young, like Graylin, who just said, let's just go for it.
I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
That's right. I love that. Yeah, I think we read the 10X Rule together. Grant Cardone wrote a book, and it's got an awesome story. But, one of his philosophies is commit. Yeah. You got something in front of you that you're called to do, commit to it, and then figure it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes, most of us actually, and that's what a lot of business models suggest, get it all figured out on paper first and then go for it. But when you really study successful people, they're just really good at trying stuff.
That's right.
They get a vision, they get an idea, and they're committed to it, and they keep trying, they keep trying, and they keep trying until they get there. And to me, it's like the human body, like that screams, no, don't do that, right? And it's counterintuitive.
That's right. When we used to talk to people about they wanted to start running when we ran a lot, the first thing they would do the first time I talked to them was go ahead and get online and sign up and pay for a 5K, 2 months in advance. Because now they've committed their finances, they've written it on their calendar, and they're scared to death. They're like, I can't even run for a minute right now. No, you're going to be able to, but let's go ahead and commit to this process. Put your money where your mouth is. Put it on your calendar. Go ahead and rent a hotel for the night before. Let's get there early that morning and run this thing. And now we go backwards and say, okay, what's it going to take for us to be ready to run that little 5K in a month or two, or whatever how many weeks we had, and then it was easier that way. But they would never end up signing up for the race if they said, well, first I got to be ready and be able to run an entire 5K before I'll even look at the schedule of races that are available. They would never get to that point, eventually give up a couple weeks into the process and just quit because they never really committed. They were still letting that fear of not knowing how this is going to turn out keep them from starting.
I love that analogy to the running plan. It's really a series. It's building a series of new habits every day and little victories every day. And, well, because you're a runner, right? Yeah. To train for a marathon, you start with a couple of miles. And then it turns into 2.1 and 2.2 and 2.3 miles, right? You just build on it. And that's personal development is the same way. And sometimes when we look at the person we want to be, standing from the person in a place that we're looking from the position of the person that we are already, it seems insurmountable. It seems like we can't do it. But it's certainly possible. Our human body can do things like running a 50K.
Yeah, I think the reason the number of people that do such extraordinary things is so small is because only a very small amount of people can see them being someone who they're not currently. And so we stay where we're comfortable because we can only really see who we are currently. And they don't have the vision to say, I could be this, or I could be that, or I could... If I make this much, I could see me doubling that or tripling it or 10 times. And the number of people that see that, it's very small. And we all know their names are all over the magazines and TVs and the Forbes 500 because we know them because there's such a small amount of them that we're able to even take the steps to start being that. You know, the best athlete in the world most people are just very average because they can't see themselves being above average. And so they just don't start the process. They can't envision it.
Yeah.
And I think that's another good reason for True North is to have someone walk alongside you who can keep encouraging you that there's someone in you that you haven't tapped into yet. There's someone there that could accomplish A, B, and C if we'll take the right steps to get there.
Yeah, focusing on the whys. You know, we talk about that a lot. It's getting clear about why you want to go where you want to go, and it makes the steps easier, right, to taking those steps. And again, it's all about process. It's all about behaviors. It's all about decision-making. It's all about habits. We just have to string a whole bunch of them together, and it's not that difficult to do. It just requires some tenacity. And, you know, I think part of that, walking along with a coach or a buddy, is we're not wired to do life alone. In community, I know this from my career in sales marketing and professional development, that you get a team of people together, especially a team of people that have different perspectives. You can create a lot, but it requires you to have healthy conflict, to let go of the outcome, to be more committed to the mission than to my own way. I mean, it requires a lot of disciplines and a lot of ideological decisions that need to be made that most people are uncomfortable with. So as we move toward wrapping up, I know you've got a busy afternoon to go out and serve some people, right?
Yep.
Open house today. That's exciting. How do we figure out what our calling is, what our purpose is?
Those who believe that God has a hold on their life and those who don't believe that will answer that question differently, I think. You know, I think that for me, I believe God is who he says he is. I believe he knows all the hairs on my head. I believe he knows me by name. And I believe he has created a purpose for my life. So part of that is knowing him well enough to listen to him as he tries to walk me through this life. Practically, you know, you're looking for things that you're good at, things that you're passionate about, things that you get excited about, things that fuel you, that if you're going to do them the next day, you're excited as you lay down to go to bed at night because you're thinking about what you're going to get to do the next day. You know, whatever you want to talk about, you know, getting the right person on the right seat on the bus or whatever, whoever's writing whatever book out there, however you want to say it, it matters that you're doing the thing that God's created you to do. Because if you, for a long enough period, don't do that, you will struggle with your identity. You will struggle with your role in society. You will struggle with whether or not you can actually influence anybody because you're kind of just dragging along doing things that maybe you're not really been intended to do. Not to say that everything should come easy for us or that you always get to do your favorite thing. I mean, I'd love to just play golf all day, but I don't think that's really how God made me. I like golf. I think God wants me to be outside. He wants me to be athletic. He wants me to compete. But he didn't put me on this earth to be a professional golfer. That would be a cool life, but that's not how he created me to be. I also need to do the things not just that are fun or easy, but that give me purpose. And I think when you design, like we've talked about, being a teacher and a leader,
Yes.
When you're not teaching and not leading, you should not feel like your complete self if you're supposed to be a leader teacher. And so to find the ways to lead and to teach in the environments that God has currently put you in, that's important. To not, no matter where you find yourself, you can still be that person who God has made you to be, as long as you believe that that's still who you're supposed to be, and then find ways to do those things.
Yeah. I love that we are fed in our areas of giftedness. Doesn't mean we can't do other things. Doesn't mean we won't do other things. We can't work 24/7 in all of our areas of giftedness. I'm sure there are things that you have to do all day long every day that you don't love.
Sure.
That afford you the time that you need, that put you in positions that allow you to be that leader and teacher that we've not discovered. You've always known you're a leader and a teacher, but some of the work we've done has confirmed that, right? That yes, this is work you're wired to do. Yes, in real estate, this fits for you. Yes, let's continue to build habits and practices that allow you to walk in that space more regularly so you can be fulfilled. The biggest thing is that you can have an impact in people's lives for God, right?
Sure. And I think even like me, if you're walking into a brand new environment for the first time and you know nothing, when you have this other stuff down pat, who you are, the clarity of who God created you to be, knowing that you're not taking credit for your life, but you're putting it on Him, you can walk into a brand new room and not be anxious, not be afraid, not be worried about what you know or don't know, but being satisfied and content in Christ, knowing who He has made you to be, knowing that He's walking into that room with you, and then go and be yourself. And all of a sudden, a lot of the fears get stripped away, and you can go in there and learn and be productive and be successful because you knew walking in that this is who I am, this is what I'm strong in, this is what God's created me to be. He is in His sovereign, perfect wisdom and knowledge put me in this place.
Yes.
How does He want to use me?
Yeah. And, that's the beauty of teams and working with other people as well. Is here's an area that I'm strong. Let me partner up with some people that have other gifts and other talents, and together we can accomplish so much more, right, than walking around not looking for other individuals to connect with and walk with. So that's amazing.
And imagine if everyone on that team had someone like you walking with them, so they had every person in the room had clarity on who they were, what their strengths were, what their weaknesses were, what their role was supposed to be on that team. You're light years ahead of a team where everyone's still struggling with their own personal identity.
You hear it, knowing who I am, being comfortable in my own skin. There are a lot of references to that idea, but it's a real thing, right? Studying yourself, reading the Word, understanding who God made you to be, and then walking in that direction. It's a totally different life than wandering around trying to please your own flesh and please the world. It's super painful. I might have, friends that maybe try to build me up. I might have money in the bank, but being miserable is no way to go through life, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's really a night and day experience. So thank you, Brian. Anything to add before we wrap up on this topic? Thank you so much. Bottom line, there are tons of resources that help you also learn about who you are. I mentioned the Enneagram. I think we used 16 personalities when you and I got together, and that's a version of the Myers-Briggs type indicator. There's a DISC survey assessment as well. So there are lots of different resources out there to try to figure out who you are, how you're wired, so you can go walk in your purpose. So thank you all for watching. We want to be here to encourage you to find your purpose and walk in it. See you next episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you would like to learn more about what it means to discover and walk in your full potential, click the link below or go to True North Development.